Welcome to the FNO InsureTech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things InsureTech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Well, hello, podcast world. Welcome to another edition of FNO InsureTech. You are here attending this episode with us. You have Lee Boyd coming to you from Waco, Texas. Say hi again, Lee.
Hi, everybody.
And Rob Beller coming to you from beautiful, sunny California.
Why didn't Waco get a nice thing said about it?
Well, I don't think that Waco can compete with California when it comes to a place that people want to go visit.
Well, we have really high mold today. We are actually the allergy center of America, I've been told, the Dust Bowl. You don't have that.
It's a funny thing that you bring this up because I've heard that many times. As you know, I've visited Waco and lived in Waco. Shortly. And allergies are like something that everybody has in common in Waco.
Yeah, they're like pants. I mean, everyone has allergies. You move to Waco, you just expect to have it. Now, if you drive 45 minutes a different direction, all of a sudden it kind of clears up. But right now, it is just the worst. We have all of the blooms are coming out, all the oak trees, and it's just awful.
What's with Waco? Are you in a bowl or something? Does it all kind of sift down?
That's what they say. You know what else is interesting about Waco?
No, I don't. Please share it with us.
There are these cliffs in Cameron Park that is said, I've been told, I've read that these cliffs cause such an upward draft that it causes thunderstorms to break apart and miss Waco. So that's why a lot of times thunderstorms are on their way to Waco and all of a sudden they just split up. Now, I don't know if it's true, but that's what I was told. Yeah.
Look at that.
You think it's true?
You think you're going to listen to this podcast and learn about, things insurance, InsureTech, whatnot. What you really come for are these important tidbits about our lives, right?
Facts about weather. Hey,
facts.
We deal with weather.
We're in the weather business.
Yeah.
My mother, rest in peace, used to call me every time there was weather anywhere.
Yes. My mom does too.
She would say, Rob, are you busy? Are you busy because of XYZ and XYZ state? And I would always say, Mom, no, it doesn't exactly work like that.
No.
But
thank you for calling.
It's good to talk to you.
Yeah.
But no, in fact, speaking of my mother reminds me that today is a very special day. It's St. Patrick's Day.
It is St. Patrick's Day. Happy St. Patty's Day to you, Rob.
Well, thank you. And to you, Lee, I do assume that you are of the Irish heritage.
I learned recently through 23andMe that I am from Ireland. Like 24% of my blood or something like that dates all the way back to Ireland and then a little bit from England. But yeah, that's where it says I'm from.
This is, of course, an audio presentation. But if you all could see Lee Boyd, you'd look at him and you'd say, you know what? I can see him picking potatoes, or I can see him sitting in a pub.
Yeah.
Having a pint, right?
I've never done that, but it does sound fun.
You have the bloodline for it.
That's what I'm told.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. Speaking of Irish people, I think that our guest is Irish.
Really?
It's just a guess.
Could be.
I cannot back that up, though.
Yeah, I have no idea.
But I was looking for a way to start talking about our guest, who is one of those rare people. She is a three-timer.
Maybe a saint of InsureTech.
She is a three-timer on the FNO InsureTech podcast. One of our favorite all-time guests.
Yeah.
A brilliant woman, Harvard-educated, VC alumni who is making waves in that business. Why don't you do the intro of her today?
I can do that. We have Katelyn Johnson today of AmFam Ventures. This is her third time to be on. We'd love to visit with her. She's going to bring insight into the world of InsureTech and what's going on, what's hot out there right now. Maybe what does she have her eye on? It's always a delight. Last time she was on, we got to talk about Wise and in an in-depth interview about them. And today we're going to get to talk about new areas to be watching for.
Right. And if anybody knows what's hot, it's AmFam Ventures, who has a track record that's, right up there in the top 10 for corporate venture capital, as well as just the venture capital marketplace in general. And we'll also talk about the new addition to the Johnson family.
Yes. Very excited for her.
Very excited for the Johnson family. Though we had to put up with lots of technical difficulties, it was well worth it. And we're excited to share our interview and our latest information about the marketplace with you from Katelyn Johnson, Managing Director at AmFam Ventures. Hey, everybody. We are here with, I'm just going to say this, even though it's going to get Lee and I in a lot of trouble. Maybe our favorite guest ever.
Oh man, quite the honor.
On the podcast. Yep. What do you think, Lee?
Yep. Big deal. Big deal.
Okay.
I always enjoy getting to visit with her.
We're not going to get in trouble?
No.
Caribou's not going to put us on the do not podcast list?
No, he'll have to come back on and just continue his efforts.
Martha's not going to put us on the do not podcast list?
Maybe.
I mean, we've had 120 some episodes, Katelyn, and we love everybody who we've had. I don't think we've had anything but great guests, but you stand out, and I'll tell you why. There's two reasons. First, and not the biggest reason, the smallest reason, is you're brilliant, you're great at your job, you're enthusiastic and exciting and willing to go talk about anything to do with the business.
Yeah.
That's the boring part. The exciting part is you gave us an episode when you were like minutes from giving birth.
That's right.
You were like 40 weeks pregnant and you did your first episode with us.
Very true. Very true.
Dedication.
That is dedication to the podcast, man.
That's right. You know what came first, the podcast.
That's right. My life's priorities are, I think, I did a good job with those.
Yeah, because usually what we have to do is we have to get on with our guests and explain to them why the podcast is more important than anything else in their life, like, say, giving birth, right? But with you, we didn't even have to do that.
No. Yeah, and in fact, I told my son, if you try to come, good luck, because I'm doing the podcast.
That's awesome.
You come
podcast
second
first,
to the podcast.
That's right.
Since then, congratulations on having him.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Tell us about him. Did you name him Rob? That's the first question.
I wish I had named him Rob, but we did not, in fact.
Not too late.
Rob. Yeah.
Not too late.
That is true. Didn't Amy Schumer, that's her name, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. She renamed her kid after his birth.
So there's a precedent. You can do it.
There is a precedent. So he is fabulous. He's almost 7 months and he's gotten into this really interesting phase where he's sitting up. He's engaging with you. You're starting to see cracks of his personality come out. We got lucky. He's a very jovial, happy little guy. He's very tolerant. So diaper changes easy, wiping things from his face easy. He's just kind of bopping along doing life and living the dream. Because I don't know what I'm doing where I wake up and go to work every day, but this kid's got it made. So I'm just kidding. I love what I do, so I know why. But yeah, no, it's a pretty sweet life. His life.
That's wonderful.
Well, welcome back for another go round. We wanted to have you on because you have an amazing perspective and you work for an amazing group, AmFam Ventures.
Yes.
And there's a lot's been going on at AmFam Ventures, yeah?
Yes, a lot has.
So tell us what you do there again, and maybe get us a little excited about what's cooking there.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm one of 4 managing directors at the fund, and we are focused on investing in the future of InsureTech, which we are really excited about and think it's a sector that not only is hot right now, but will continue to be a large and attractive market. And we kind of like to we planted our flagpole here back in 2013 and kind of called it like ahead of the curve to say, hey, this is actually a sector that's really going to be big and here to stay and change the future of insurance in a very meaningful way. And we did that ahead of the massive amounts of VC dollars that have just piled in since. And I think that's so exciting to have watched this thesis that we had play out of, there's a real innovation to be had here, and marrying that with now all the dollars and more so the talent, because the dollars have brought in people who are much more interested in building insurance companies, because everybody before was like, insurance, why would I want to get into insurance? Like, I think the running joke in insurance is I stumbled into insurance. I didn't try to get into it.
Correct.
And so
I couldn't find anything else, so I got into insurance.
so I was relegated to insurance. Mm-hmm. And now people are actively lining up, like trying to seek opportunities in here in this market. And we just could not be more excited to meet and back those founders.
It's funny that you say that. Lee was busy the other day and I did a podcast by myself, which make sure all of our audience hears that, because you want to listen up for the one that I do all by myself, because you get all Rob all the time.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
What could be better than that?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Anyway, that's not my point. My point is we had on the CEO of Trust Layer, if you're familiar.
Oh, yeah.
And he was talking about how exciting it is to be in insurance and how insurance is his career of choice, and that he's just can't believe how great insurance is and how exciting it is and how thrilling it is. And we honestly hear that more and more and more and more these days than, for people like Lee and I who've been in the industry for a long time. 10 years ago, everybody agreed that, insurance was just the most boring place that you could work, but it was a good place to work, and the work was good and honest and important. But today, it's like this thrilling sector. Do you agree with that perspective?
I think that the evolutions we've seen in technology have unearthed so many different and interesting facets, and also market dynamics that we couldn't have seen or predicted would have occurred. And so let me unpack one of those. For instance, what Lemonade, Root, Metromile have done for this sector, say what you will about the businesses and whether they'll be here, they've been valued on growth, whereas insurance carriers historically have always been valued on return on equity. And that's just changed a different dynamic where the carriers of today are saying, oh man, what do I need to do to compete? If I can't compete on growth, I need to compete on my loss ratios, or I need to compete on my expense ratios. And we've just seen a renewed interest. I think this competition has not only heated up for the startups and for people working in these upstarts, but it has made and revolutionized at the carrier level people's jobs and their excitement and engagement. And so I just think it's just been a net positive for the whole industry.
I completely agree. I think that one of the best parts of InsureTech is it's redefining and re-energizing insurance in general. And like you said, it's giving different ways. We've always looked at it through a very narrow looking glass or focus, and it's much broader now.
Yeah, totally.
There's other ways to define value and look at the balance sheet.
Yep, completely agreed.
You mentioned that, this flood of money that's coming into InsureTech. Tell us what do you make of that? Everybody's discovered, as a venture capital provider, I have to have InsureTech in my portfolio.
That's absolutely right. And I think the reason they have is because they've realized just how much of an untapped sector this was before. It was a bit of a white space, right? And I think a couple of things. We think of ourselves as being insurance experts, right? And whether it be the focus that our fund has, the expertise of our LPs that we're able to leverage, the expert networks that we have, and it allows us to invest very shrewdly and smartly in the space. But when you're looking from a later stage game and you might not be an insurance expert, but you're just trying to catch up enough to understand, hey, we're writing some big checks here. We're a fund responsible for deploying a massive amount of dollars. As competition heats up, it gets harder. There's more noise, right? And so it gets harder to be smart. So I think a really interesting dynamic that has unfolded is that the first few funds that took the risk and said, hey, we don't really know insurance, but this seems big, like we should get behind it, will probably do well because the companies that rose to that level are probably highly credible. But now we're at this interesting inflection point, like Stripe, right? Everybody agrees, $1 billion business, really interesting business. And now it's almost like anybody, what I'm seeing in the early stage venture circuits is there are funds out in the valley that will sponsor an apartment for Stripe employees to live in before they've even quit their jobs, just so they can get an early look at what those people might build should they decide to quit their jobs and do a startup. That's like the crazy world that we live in today.
Wow.
Because
that's remarkable.
And Stripe's the gold standard and the goose that laid the golden egg. And so now anybody who touches that, almost defunct, has the Midas touch by default. That has been really interesting to watch that unfold. And I think what you're starting to see is not to the same extent, but you're definitely seeing that in insurance, in the InsureTech landscape, because you're seeing companies do really well. And that success has brought renewed interest from other folks. And now you're seeing folks leave those startups and do their own startup in insurance. And now funds are saying, oh, I feel more comfortable. These bigger funds are saying, oh, we can go earlier now because we're starting to see the talent go earlier. Whereas before we didn't really have an opinion, but now it's the sector is maturing a little bit more. We're starting to gain our bearings. And I just think we're getting a lot more, interest and smart money flowing into the space. So it's really fun to watch.
Well, whenever you say that, it makes me think that we are on a second generation of this InsureTech startup. Think of all the companies that have been around for 4 or 5 years that are starting to really come into their own. They're starting to get bought up. You have those entrepreneurs who are now able to start another one. Is that
Right.
pretty typical for an entrepreneur, who ends a very successful run with a company to go out and start another one and be successful again?
We've long since had a thesis, I think, in the venture world that repeat founders are the founders you want to back. And I think that there is some truth to that, but I've also seen it blow up in people's faces. There is a little bit of can you make lightning in the bottle happen again? And a lot of that is due to how the operators execute. And so what you're getting in a tried and true, vetted and successful founder is he or she did something right the first time to have a strong exit out the back end. And so there was a good bit of execution. So you're kind of taking and de-risking on the execution standpoint. And then you really just need to understand the market headwinds and the business that they're trying to build.
You guys at AmFam just recently purchased, I don't know how AmFam Ventures fit into it all, but one of the big pieces of news that came out in the last several months is your guys' acquisition of Bold Penguin.
Right.
And Ilya Bodner, the CEO and founder, is just this exactly kind of person you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I was saying, earlier, I think there's two types of founders really. And there's the people who strike it big, get rich, and then they say, well, I'm out. I've got a lot of the world to see. I'm going to go follow my passions and see where life takes them. And they're functionally done working. I call them the early retirees. And then you've got the folks who like Ilya, who are just builders by their very nature and couldn't imagine not waking up and having a mission and just something you believe so fervently in to go and execute on. And that's what Ilya is. And so it's just been a really fun thing to watch as he's transitioned from as CEO, and he's still CEO, but he went from being a CEO of an independent company to the CEO that's sitting within a larger enterprise. And he's now a senior leader in the enterprise. And, just that has brought a whole new renewed amount of excitement. It's like another Everest for him to climb, another puzzle for him to figure out. And it's just always really cool to see those types of people and how they're wired.
Yeah, that's always awesome. I can think about leaders out there who I would consider that. And, it's just so much fun to watch those people do what they love to do, right? When they have a passion about that. What are you seeing out there? From AmFam Ventures, what are you interested in investing in at this time? Is it a certain technology? Is there a certain market? What are y'all looking at?
We are looking at a bunch of stuff. We're looking at the life insurance market can stand to be shaken up a little bit. So we're looking at a bunch of interesting stuff in that vein. I think from an operational standpoint, we've had a very long-standing interest in claims because as we see it, the InsureTechs that have recently SPAC'd or IPO'd, Lemonade, Root, Metromile, Hippo, have largely done so on growth multiples. So they were valued largely on the growth of their premium versus traditional carriers that are valued on their return of equity. And so what we've seen in that market is that from the implications that has had is that the carriers have then said, well, we need to compete in some way. And I touched on this earlier. And what they've done is essentially, I think a big part of that has been a renewed focus on claims and reducing LAEs or expense ratios. And so we've been spending a ton of time as a group on claims infrastructure, claims technology that will really help drive down the cost and streamline while creating a pleasant user experience. Because you guys know better than anybody that how a customer interacts with you during that time of need really has a lasting impact on them.
It's a great predictor of retention.
Exactly.
If you can do a good job when they need you,
yes.
then chances are they stay with you. And if you don't do a good job when they need you, then the opposite is probably true.
Absolutely. Because like we always say, or I always say is, nobody really wants to buy insurance. It's not a product you're excited about purchasing, but it's a product that you're really glad you have when you're in that pinch. And so like consumers aren't really brand, like nobody, like I don't think steps back other than like USAA, right? And says, oh, I'm with this carrier because their brand just really resonates with me. I think it's more because there was a cost or I bundled but man, after you go through a claim incident and you have a really positive experience, that's when that brand becomes endears itself to you and you stay with them.
Are you seeing a technology or technologies out there on the claim side that's kind of addressing the claim more broadly, approaching more end to end? Like there's some tools out there that are, highly effective, like Hover. I think you guys were involved or have been or are involved in Hover. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hover addresses one particular piece in that puzzle. It takes the pictures, does the measurements, identifies damage. But there's so much more in that claims process from end to end. Are you seeing technologies that are more incorporative, that address a broader stretch of it? Or is it still just tools that are going to be pieced together and work in combination?
Yeah, no, I think we are starting to see the very green shoots of that type of a robust entity. And I think it's really exciting. But I think that, I guess, a headwind against that is the InsureTechs of today that are being built today are all like just so API driven. It's almost built so that these point solutions can work seamlessly into this platform. And so I totally buy there's a thesis where somebody comes in and says, hey, our claims module, here is the claims module end to end. It works great. It has all of your, you don't have to have any ancillary contracts for, video service with the customers or a chat bot with them. Like we provide all of that. It's one-stop shop. But I also think that to do that, you have to either have the special sauce on so many of those points, or you're integrating in with the companies that are providing those point solutions and you're just the bundle point and then rolling it out to customers. Like for instance, you've determined Hi Marley is the claims chatbot that is for us. And so we're just push all of our customers to it. And this piece of the platform will be powered by Hi Marley. I've seen that done really well because I think otherwise you get into you're trying to be too many things at one time. And there are players out there, like Hi Marley is a great example of this. They're focused on the claims chat experience. And that's where all of their resources are going. And so they've done a really great job on building out that platform.
Right.
And so that's what I think we'll start seeing more of is people who are trying to bundle this. But then it begs the question, do the InsureTechs want more control over their service providers instead of having an entity select what is best on their behalf?
That's really interesting. Kind of a 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals the solution instead of one. And that's an interesting part because, again, on the claims side, there are unique parts to it that don't have anything to do with the other. Like Hi Marley's good example is all about communication.
Exactly.
Within the claim. It's not about, is it a covered loss? Is it, what are the measurements?
Right.
What are the, components of the damage of the products that need to be repaired? Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just sitting here thinking, you were talking about how we're looking at some of these companies based on their potential growth, right?
Right.
Some of these values being placed on these companies. And I'm just thinking, doesn't that lead us to I'm sorry, there's a giant drill going. Okay. So I was just thinking about that. And I'm thinking, doesn't that lead to the possibility of a bubble being burst even greater than traditionally looking at companies based on what they've done? Whenever you're starting to kind of value them based on where you think they're going to go, is that what all the other industries are doing, or is this different?
Well, I think you can look at it two ways. Like that is for sure an outcome that's on the table right now, that this is just, that the public markets were silly, that this was way overvalued and there will be a bubble that burst. Or you can think of it as, Lemonade, for instance. They were just given $400 million. And if you believe that they're smart people and you believe that, what can you accomplish with $400 million? Can you figure out something that fits in the market by the time you've exhausted those funds? Yeah, probably. So we might see a bunch of pivots. We might see entities that come out looking drastically different or moderately different than what they went in and what investors plowed money behind. But I think it's this thought of, there's probably some smart people here that can figure it out along the way. And so I think when we look at it, we're not all doom and gloom, where I think it can be easy to get into that mindset. But I think the coming months will be really interesting and very telling as to where things shake out. And it will have lasting impact. Like, so for instance, if we have a bunch of, if it is a bubble and that bursts, I think, it could have an impact on the exits and what that looks like for the rest of the sector, for sure. I mean, how could it not?
The exits are remarkable, the exits that are going on. Like you mentioned Stripe and what Stripe's new valuation is.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you guys deal with that? How can you keep up with it?
It's a great question. Like we focus so early that luckily we don't have to deal with trying to value these assets towards like the end of their cycle in the startup land. But it is something we have to think about because it's what we underwrite to, right? And we want to make sure we're not getting ahead of our skis with valuations in the early stage. But I think if I look through the lens of where have we seen valuations, they have absolutely crept up. It has not been linear. The jump from valuations in 2020 to the valuations in 2021, they're just night and day. So it is already having an impact on what we're seeing in the market, at least at an early stage level.
So you mentioned life, you mentioned claims. What else is interesting out there? What else do you see when you look out over 21 and 22? What's exciting?
Yeah, I think that there's probably some play around brokerages and having those be a little bit more tech enabled. And so, I mean, you look at Goosehead and how successful they've been with their, IAs and the business that they've built. Yeah, it's just been tremendous. And so we're also really excited about that front. So if there's anybody out there, shout out to all my entrepreneurs out there looking to build something in the brokerage space, come find us. We want to chat for sure. So that's kind of another, what is certainly hot right now. I believe Andreessen Horowitz penned a post called Embedded Insurance. And that's a thesis. So just for folks who aren't familiar with that term, it's almost insurance everywhere, that insurance will be sold in tandem at checkout at points of sale for other products. So for instance, you're interested in going to a concert. Well, you can insure that during the checkout process for you buying your concert ticket. And this is a thesis that at American Family we've been long on for a while. And so it actually is the underpinnings of our investment in ClearCover and our investment in another company called Protect, which actually does live event ticket insurance. So we're really excited to see, I don't want to even say renewed enthusiasm, but just continued enthusiasm in the space.
I understand that, like on the tickets is a great example.
Yeah.
But if you start growing that out wider and wider and wider, don't you end up with 130 different policies that you've purchased at various times during checkout?
For sure. It certainly makes it more cumbersome to try to manage. That's why I think, I think there is something to specializing here, right? Like, I don't know if you can I think picking a lane and going in, and I don't believe people will just buy insurance for any single product. Like, I don't think we're going to see all of a sudden new types of insurance products, like some, sure. I think we've seen a lot of product. I think it's going to be less on the product innovation standpoint and more on the distribution standpoint. So my guess is you're not going to have 130 policies that are all going to be hyper relevant to you that you're going to want to keep track of.
Is the thought to really make insurance more invisible and just easier, and those companies that can really put it there at checkout? I mean, isn't that the way things are going to start to go? You buy a house, maybe perhaps, and then it's just seamless. Right now you buy a house, you got to go to an agent, you got to decide. I mean, eventually buying insurance has got to become even easier.
100%. And it's the jury's still out on, like, to Rob's point a little bit of like, okay, so say you buy a bunch of policies and then you have a claim and you need to make a claim, I should say. And like, who are you going to go to? Are you going to go to the website where you purchased this? Are they going to handle your claim and kind of like take it back to the carrier? Are you going to go direct to the carrier itself? Like, who ultimately owns that consumer at the end of the day, I think will be really interesting to see how that unfolds. But yeah, I think the whole point of kind of this embedded insurance play or this incidental distribution thesis is that you want insurance to be easy to sign up for, and that when people, because it's not a product that people are overly enthusiastic about purchasing, if you make it just convenient for them, if you make it seamless, take a lot of the friction out and provide them just a great user experience, that you'll be able to bind a bunch more policies, because it's the added thought, the added lift, the added mental cycles that kind of drives people away from wanting to pull the trigger.
Is that part of why you think that you guys are interested in brokers and brokerage and all that stuff, is that the agent continues to be so important because of the complexity of insurance?
I think for sure. I mean, definitely in the middle market, I think that's why we've seen it to be very difficult for tech to kind of break through into that market. I think, in the SMB, we continue to believe that people, like, there's two ways to look at this. Either the product is very self-explanatory, in which, great, direct consumer play makes a lot of sense, and you can kind of commoditize a bunch of that. Like, think auto policies. It's very easy to shop for those.
Very easy.
But like, then you start thinking about home policies. Like, well, what type of home are you getting? Like, some of those can be streamlined, but some of them have an added wrinkle. Or maybe you want to bundle your home with your auto now. How are you going to do that? And an agent and a human, I think, will always, humans are good at selling, and I think they'll continue to remain relevant.
It's funny you say that, because I've been involved in a homework assignment for myself as an insurance professional and somebody who's on this, crazy podcast, to try to buy a new insurance policy for myself and my home and my car. And can I tell you, and I've resisted calling an agent.
Okay.
I've resisted that. It's really hard.
It's really hard, right?
What's so hard about it?
I have not been able to do it yet. I've gotten online with a couple of different InsureTechs to do it. Sometimes I can't bundle. Some don't offer me a bundle. I live in California. That might be part of it. I've used other ones, consolidators. I don't know what you call them. So far, I have not had success.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's harder than you would think, or
Mm-hmm.
than I would have thought that it is. What does it make me want to do? It makes me want to pick up the phone and call somebody
Yeah.
and say, hey, can you please help me? Not the constant emails and the computer and everything and text messages trying to prompt me down the line.
I totally understand that. I just went through a bunch of this myself, and I used an agent. I now have an agent for the first time in my life. And it was for that exact reason. I wanted to offload the whole process. Like, I didn't want to invest the time to go get the quotes. I didn't want to invest the time to enter like into a bunch of engines the information that I needed. So until underwriting gets to the point where it's like a 2-3 question lift across the whole industry, and then they can spit out policies to you, and you, the consumer, don't have to like go rekey a bunch of information. It's just agents are very attractive for that reason.
We're rounding the corner here because your son sent me an instant message saying, can I have my mom back? Which I thought was pretty nervy of him to disrupt my flow like that. God, kids today, if he's doing that at 7 months, what's he going to be doing at a year? That's what I want to know. Anyway, let's talk about COVID and that whole crazy thing. And I mean, I think we're all in agreement that we're kind of at a point with COVID, beside being tired of it, that we can kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel, maybe. So does that tunnel include you guys going to InsureTech Connect this year? Will you be at the big event?
My guess, and I feel like we have a higher degree of certainty in this than we probably have had in recent months on events while attending, is yes. Especially since the Biden administration kind of, I think, went on stage and said everybody will have enough vaccines for everybody by May.
Right.
I suspect that by the time October rolls around, everyone will have had the opportunity to get their 2 shots, and we will be physically in Las Vegas in the smoke tunnels of the Vegas casinos for InsureTech Connect.
And why is that important to AmFam Ventures?
I think it's just this meeting of the minds where for 4 or 5 days, you see everybody who's relevant in your universe, or you can get in touch with anybody who's relevant in your universe. It is the one-stop shop for the insurance world and the event to go to every year. And so as a fund that is focused on the future of insurance, it's important for networking reasons. It's important to hear what trends we think and hear from industry leaders as to what they're seeing come down the pike. It is important we talked about network, but there's a few wrinkles there. It could be because you need to meet and get in front of people. You need to have your brand out there so people continue to say, oh yeah, AmFam Ventures, super relevant when we think of insurance. And it's just it's a place to, catch up with folks that you haven't seen in, at this point, almost a year and a half.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Are you shopping? Are you guys shopping when you're there?
For sure. I mean, we're always shopping. So, I always tell people, if you bump into one of us, always be pitching.
Uh-huh.
Hey, whenever you're looking for a company, is it somebody who has a great idea, or is it somebody who's already in practice with that idea? What are y'all looking for?
We've done both. Like, for instance, ClearCover was literally whiteboarded in our offices, and we said, great, let's fund this. And we have one right now that we haven't announced yet. But the same thing. It was literally a little bit of an entrepreneur came to us, hey, I've got this great tech, this great idea. We massaged it with him, and then we're like, this is fundable. Let's get behind it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fun. That's really cool.
It is cool. I will say, though, those are in the minority of the investments that we do. Like we've done, a handful of them, but it is really fun when we get to do them.
And when you say early stage, define that. Define what early stage means to you.
So I used to get away with saying we're seed to Series B, and people that was like a thing. But now seed has morphed into a bunch of stuff. So now I say we're incubation to Series B. The steps along the way that I see go from you could incubate, you could do a pre-seed, you could do a seed round, you can do a seed plus round, you can do an A, you can do a B, and we will look at you at any point in time along that chain.
And what kind of dollars does that translate into from pre-seed up to Series B?
The lowest that we'd probably write a check for would be $250K. And then on the upper end, we can look at things, early checks in 8 million, maybe up to 10 million. But our checks on the higher end are getting higher because our first checks are, because just valuations have been going up, and to maintain ownership levels, you need to cut bigger checks.
When we first interviewed you, weren't you just closing a new fund?
We were.
You had put a new fund together?
Mm-hmm. We had, yep.
That was the one where you guys brought in some of the other CVCs, right?
We did, yep. So MultiLP Fund, backed by, a cadre of folks that are carriers, people who are financial institutions that have a vested interest in insurance, or corporations that are just really excited about the insurance ecosystem. It's been going swimmingly well. It's been going really well. It has allowed us to provide, we're seeing our thesis play out, which was we bring more entities together that care about insurance, and it develops a richer ecosystem for everybody, for the startups that we're involved with, to the LPs that have backed us, because we're able to show those LPs a lot of startups that are relevant to their business and operations. And they're also able to connect with the startups in our ecosystem, either the ones we decide to invest in, or ones that we say, hey, it's not a fit right now, but you should definitely talk with our LPs, because I think there could be an operating contract at the end of that conversation. And so that has gone really well, and we've been able to deliver that value, as well as, so far, strong financial returns. So we're really happy about that.
Very cool. Well, we're really happy to have you.
Always.
And of course, the problem is that being an all-time, now this is your third time on our podcast, right?
Third, yeah.
So that entitles you to a super deluxe, very, very expensive gift as a 3-timer. It's only been given out a couple of times to other 3-timers, and I don't want to spoil the surprise.
All right.
I'll just say, be looking in the mail every day.
Ooh.
So listen, thank you. What do you say? Thanks to her, Lee.
Well, I did, but then there was a drill in the background, so I had to stop. So thank you very much for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Katelyn.
All right, guys, talk soon.
Always a pleasure to have Katelyn.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's wonderful to talk to. She's just one of those people who really light you up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me how broad the insurance world has become, that now you have people like her who are involved in it from the financial side, from the investment side, and have tremendous knowledge of it and familiarity of it being the insurance industry, and are now critical parts of it that really just a few years ago, it didn't even exist.
Yeah,
right?
It's fun to think back. We've been doing this podcast for 120 weeks, and you think about what we thought about InsureTech 2 years ago, and what we think about it now. It seemed like a niche then, and now it seems like such a large world. It's this whole big world of InsureTech, and she gets to play in that space every day, all day, and really just look at all the corners of that world. It's so big. It's so big.
Right. And plus, a couple of years ago, it kind of felt like InsureTech was a part, just this own component, a component of the insurance world. And now it feels to me far more integrated. It's more mainstream. The whole thing is more mainstream. And you have people like Katelyn who are now part of the mainstream.
Well, and it turned so much more from InsureTech, right? I'm going to invest in technology to I'm going to invest in insurance and everything around insurance. And now we're just a part of the insurance world at its core. And people are really investing in insurance and insurance technology and insurance ideas. That's where we're at. It's now just a normal state of life.
We're fortunate to have friends like Katelyn to be on with us and to come back and put up with us several times. And we thank her for being with us. And thank you guys, as always, for listening. and being part of our community. And so thanks, and until next time.
Goodbye, everybody.